The views expressed in this episode are those of the individual guests and not necessarily those of myself and the Tristen Law Show. It's the Tristen Law Show. It's the Tristen Law Show, guys. How are you? How are you doing? I mean, some of you guys waited for this so long, and thank you so much for checking this out, because I am Tristen Law, and this is the Tristen Law Show. Hey, I honestly hope that you're doing fine and you're in good health right now, but if you're not in good health right now, I want to wish you a speedy recovery. Thank you for allowing me into your home, your car, or however you're going to be listening to this, but most importantly, thank you for allowing me to distract you from whatever it is that you need to be distracted from. Man, so many people have been waiting for this because they've said to me one-on-one, personally, in social media, any way they can let me know, that they've seen some of the stuff that I've done before in podcasts and some of the stuff that I've done in the realm of entertainment. They're like, man, Tristen, we really can't wait for you to bring us this show. So I hope I don't disappoint, and I'm here to stay. But the plan of the Tristen Law Show is to introduce you to the personalities inside and outside the world of professional wrestling. That includes pro wrestlers, seamstresses, ring announcers, musicians, and more. But that's what's on the inside. The outside can be with anyone that has an interesting story to tell. So the best part about the Tristen Law Show is that you do not need to be a professional wrestling fan to listen to this show. No. What you need to be is a person that wants to hear about other people. Everybody has an interesting story to tell, and you'll be able to hear that story here on the Tristen Law Show. Also, anyone wanting consideration for being a future guest on the Tristen Law Show, visit the show website, tristenlawshow.com, and contact the show. I will introduce you to DM Stevens. He's now a referee, but he's a former pro wrestler as well. He discusses how he entered the wrestling business, how he transitioned from wrestler to ref. We talk about aquariums, goldfish, and much more. Hey, if you ask me, I think DM Stevens is a pretty interesting guy, and you'll get to meet him in just 1 second when we return here on the Tristen Law Show. Hi, I'm Tristen Law, host of the Tristen Law Show, and I'm glad that you're listening. If you like what I'm doing, consider supporting the show by heading on over to patreon.com/Tristen Law Show. There are 5 levels of membership ranging from $6 to $60 per month, and you'll get things like ad-free episodes, access to episodes earlier than the rest of the world, virtually hang out with me, opportunities to ask me anything that I'll answer here on the show, and much, much more. There's something here for everyone. Head on over to tristenlawshow.com for more info. Welcome back, everybody, to the Tristen Law Show. Thank you very much for hanging out and sticking around. Like as I promised, you're going to get the interview with one of my favorite people. But for my guest today, he is an aquarium enthusiast. He's also the host of Open Mic Wrestling Night, which streams live at twitch.tv/RefStevens. He's a video game guy and one of my favorite referees to work with in the business. He is DM Stevens. What's going on, D? What's going on? How are you, man?
Oh, not a whole heck of a lot. I'm going to make a slight correction on you. My Twitch, my Instagram, and my Twitter are all at Ref DM Stevens. So.
Oh, Ref DM Stevens. Well, listeners, it's Ref DM Stevens. So go ahead and make sure you guys follow him on all his social media. That's Instagram and Twitter, I'm presuming, correct?
Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch. I figure I'd make it easier for everybody.
Hey, well, I'm so glad that you're here hanging out with me today. But one of the things I didn't know, D, was that until reading your Twitter bio, which is at RefDM Stevens, I didn't know that you were an aquarium enthusiast. How many fish do you have in your aquarium? Do you own an aquarium?
I actually don't at the moment. It doesn't mean that I don't keep up with certain things. I mean, I have friends who that is their main job, as they are aquarium people. So, I still keep up, and I still have most of my aquariums still waiting to find a home once I get a bigger space. So, but yeah, that's been for a long time, probably, 8 to 10 years. It was a hobby that my parents had, then didn't do it for a while. And then once my mother had passed away, it was another way for me to kind of keep a relationship with her and my dad without really, without them being here, obviously. So one of these days I'll have it back up, and I'll figure out a way to keep it away from my cats. And we'll be rocking and rolling.
It's funny. A few weeks ago, I actually thought about getting goldfish. I was watching something on YouTube, and it was saying that goldfish actually come in different colors other than gold. Huh?
Yes.
Who would have thought that? Like you said, you have one of the two problems that I have. One of the problems is that I have 2 cats, and the second problem that I have is that I'm traumatized from my 2 goldfish dying back in the summer of 1996. My mother went on a vacation, and I took them to my aunt's house, and they were in a fishbowl. And, if you're an aquarium enthusiast, goldfish are really finicky when it comes to their water. So, yeah, my goldfish died.
Goldfish are finicky with their water, but what people don't seem to understand with fish, too, and when I used to work at a pet store, this would drive me nuts. Fish, especially like goldfish, that they produce a lot of waste, and it needs to be constantly filtered. That was probably the first problem, was the bowl. Usually goldfish are relatively hardy as long as they're kept clean. I wouldn't be so worried about caring for it because, shit happens. And as far as the cats, as long as you have a decent enough top to cover them, and you should be okay. I mean, I wouldn't start with anything big, maybe a 10-gallon tank. Plus, even if they do get into the tank somehow, they won't drown, so that's a good.
That's actually good. That's actually a good thing if my cat get in the tank that he doesn't drown. Here's what all the listeners want to know. Who is D.M. Stevens? Who is he?
I am the most boring person you will ever meet in your entire life.
I disagree with that because I've met you plenty of times.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to describe. I mean, my Twitter bio basically says it all. I mean, aquarium enthusiast, fighting game competitor, referee, screamer. I got my animals. I love my animals. Love a good cigar or two, a good bourbon or two.
Okay.
And I have a lot of weird things that fascinate me, whether it be off-the-grid bands or, as weird as I could be and as many interests as I have, a New York Mets baseball fan, a Carolina Panther football fan. Basketball is probably my favorite sport outside of wrestling, of course. Yeah, I mean, that's really pretty much it. I mean, I'm a very simple person with very simple needs. So it's not like I'm a world traveler and all that other stuff. So, I mean, I love Las Vegas. That's a good place I like to travel. So that's the best way that I would describe myself. I don't know how to best describe myself because everybody could be like, I'm a nice person, hard worker, this, that. But, that's honestly for anybody else to judge, not me, because I know who I am.
That's right.
But for everybody who wants to judge me for who I am, you know what? That is their prerogative. Just don't be spreading any false narratives.
Boom.
And we won't have any problems.
Currently, your role in the professional wrestling business is a referee, and we'll get into that a little bit more later in detail. But when did you get into the business, and who trained you?
I got into the business 2008. Was training that summer. My trainers were Corey Havoc and Dirtbag Dan, among a few. Trained at Joe Rule's JWA United School, I guess you can say that, facility out in New Brunswick on Jersey Avenue. I still remember the location. It was on the 3rd floor of this one warehouse building that also doubled as a boxing gym across the way, which is really cool. Guys like Joey Janela trained with me, and a bunch of other people kind of came in and out, just to kind of get a workout in and all that stuff. But, it was hot. A lot of the veterans or the people who were training me were, this place had a low ceiling. You were able to do some crazy stuff from the beams and do some stupid shit from it. So, a lot of those shenanigans went on. They taught me, all the basics of what they could. And I went along the way. They tried to train me with more stuff. Sometimes they threw me into the wolves with somebody who's just coming to work out. They're like, hey, work out with this kid. He's a natural. Great. Thanks for putting me on the spot. So I would get put into these exhibitions. I mean, God, one guy came in from, I want to say Mexico. For those wrestling fans who don't know, most other areas of the world, they work from their left. They work from their. It was very difficult to kind of keep up, but I remember that very fondly because the guy wanted to do more. I think after that day, I saw him once, maybe 2 other times, and then he stopped coming. But, working out with guys like him and another guy who's been on the independents a long time, Johnny Cockstrong, that's another guy who would come around here. And I learned a lot from many different people.
A lot of those names that you mentioned are names that actually came through BWO because I started in Florida, and when I moved up to the Northeast region in New York, I went to wrestling school to continue my education in New Jersey at BWO, and it was run at the time by Richie Rotten, Preacher, that everybody knows Preacher, and Richie Rotten if you're in Jersey, and it was also ran by Nunzio. So a lot of these names were before me, and some of them came in and out while I was there. The thing is that I don't understand crazy people who want to be pro wrestlers. Like, I don't know one person who wants to damage their body while other people cheer or boo them. Yeah, that's bullshit. That's us. But
yeah, I mean, Jersey independence, you really, at least at the time that we both kind of came into it, when we first met, we're kind of like, how the hell did we not come across one another?
Right.
At least back in that day.
Right.
And truth be told, my wrestling stint was short because I had other issues going on in life. My mother was ill and whatnot, so I had to really take my time and be with her. I had a match or two, from the time of that to probably 2013 when I started wrestling.
Right.
But to my original point, even now, with H2O around there, Pro Wrestling Magic's place can get back up and running. They have a good training going on there with Rich Rotten and Everett Cross and a bunch of other people. You won't get a better education, and especially in the day that we came in, and the New York, New Jersey area. A lot of the people you see on television now, whatever company, insert company name here, have come from around this area.
Right. Sonny Kiss, Joey Janela, and a lot of these people have actually come through the doors of Jersey. Keith Lee used to work for Pro Wrestling Magic. They've had their fair share of names that come through New Jersey. I think New Jersey and the New York area has made most of the wrestlers, the young wrestlers that we see today. I could be wrong. I don't have the statistics in front of me.
No, but you know what, though? I can't disagree, because you look at guys like Private Party on AEW.
Yep.
You look at guys like Homicide, who, depending on what happens with the NWA, he's one of the most influential guys on the independents in the last 20-plus years. Same thing with Amazing Red. You look at a lot of these talents, and whether they got trained here or they made a name for themselves in the New York, New Jersey area, it's hard to discount a lot of these talents that have come through here and have been trained here. Because you look at a lot of them and you're like, oh shit, this is great, that they're doing all that stuff too. So, it's really something impressive. You look at back in the day when Soda used to be the head of pro wrestling, like with the AWA,
right?
Gagne's training all those talents back in the day. A lot of the modern influence now in wrestling today came from guys like Amazing Red and those that he trains over at House of Glory. So,
what made you want to become a pro wrestler?
Oh God, I was dumb. I'm kidding. No.
Well, hold on. We all have to be dumb somewhat because we want to go into this place and damage our body. Like my right knee was injured. I know you remember a couple months ago, my right knee was injured. But my knee's better now, but my knee clicks, so there might not be any cartilage in my knee. I dislocated my left pinky, so my finger, I have to crack it numerous times in the day, and it kind of hangs off like a centimeter to the left. So, we got to be somewhat crazy to go into this business and to damage our body for other people's, excitement.
Like a lot of people in pro wrestling, and they're not as afraid to speak up about it as they were back in the day, but, backyard wrestling with a bunch of friends. And I was actually in contact with Corey Havoc, and I think Joey too at one point, but I just remember showing Corey a video of my group, what do you think? And I remember him telling me, you're the only one that seems to kind of get it within your group. You just come trained to be an actual pro wrestler here, whether it had been at the state of base school or NWS, like train before the events and stuff. That's basically what he was trying to get me to do for probably about a couple months. And then I finally decided, screw it, I'm going to do that. So then I stopped doing that, trained there, the rest is history. But I've been a fan my whole life. I figured, since I was being encouraged to by somebody, I felt like had a good eye for people, and he does. He was a good trainer, Corey. I wish he was still wrestling, but life has other plans.
Right.
And the rest is history.
I know there may be some aspiring pro wrestlers out there or current students out there. What was one of the hardest things for you to grasp doing your in-ring training?
I'm the worst person to ask this. Well, and it's not because of anything other than, I don't like blowing smoke up my own ass, but being an amateur wrestler, having that background, and being an athlete my whole life, it came relatively easy. And I don't want to say that to be disrespectful to anybody else, like, oh, this was the toughest stuff ever. The only stuff that was really ever tough was all the conditioning drills.
Right.
As far as doing anything, if I were to say one thing, it would be the conditioning drills. If you think you're in shape, there's no such thing as being in shape when you're not in shape.
That's right. I always tell people that you could run a marathon. You could be a marathon runner and get into a wrestling ring and be out of condition for the wrestling ring, or the term that we use is blow up. You can blow up in the ring.
Yep, absolutely. It's, because being a four-sport athlete growing up, okay, like maybe this may not be a big deal, and all these training drills are just, everyone trying to scare others away from coming into the business, which at one time was, really a thing back in the early days. They would abuse you enough to the point where you didn't want to come back. And they didn't want people who think that they want to play wrestler be there.
That's right.
So my thing was, probably the cardio would be the biggest thing to grasp. And the first thing I was also taught when I came in there, because being a backyard wrestler, and I think everybody should be told this, whether they did backyard wrestling or they're a big fan, or, oh, I think I could do this. Whatever you think throw it out the window, because you don't know shit.
Damn right. And even at the point that I am, where I've been around for a while, I still don't think I know everything. I don't want to know everything. I enjoy getting in the ring with somebody and learning, or listening to somebody that's been in the business for 5 minutes and listen to their aspect and how they see things. I'm like, oh, that could be that could be worth something. For me, one of the hardest things for me in the ring, because unlike you played 4 sports and you were athletic your entire life. I was semi-athletic. What were your 4 sports?
Wrestling, football, basketball, and baseball.
So for me, I wasn't good at baseball. I remember playing Little League and getting hit in the face with the ball. Basketball, I was no good. I couldn't dribble, and I lived in the Bronx, and we had basketball hoops like every block almost.
I was going to say, it's every block, if not a half block.
Exactly. I was terrible at that. Wrestling, I tried to start a wrestling school in my high school, and they totally put the kibosh on that. Mm-hmm. And then we had football. I was good, but I couldn't run. I couldn't catch, and I couldn't throw, but I could run. And I was always a big kid, so I can get people out the way. However, that only got me so far. So for me, when I got into professional wrestling school, when I went down to the Dudleys in like 2007, for me, one of the hard parts for me was learning how to do something simple like the hip toss. I couldn't do the hip toss. And I remember thinking, man, is this for me? But I stuck around with it, and I love teaching people the hip toss. Some of the problems that I had with it are the same problems that people are having today. So I'm actually able to help those people actually get through the troubles that they're having and actually becoming good wrestlers. There are some people out there that I have trained to do some things, and some of those people are actually blowing up to do big things. For me, I'm not selfish. I hope that anybody that I've ever worked with in the ring or trained with blows up and do really big things. But my first match was in July 2009, and there's a whole story behind mine. But D, your first match was in 2008. Who was your opponent, and what were the behind the scenes on your first match?
First match was December 1st, 2008. I know it was in December 1st, 2008. Let's just go with that.
Right.
With Chief Shay Chronic. And I believe he was a product out of Johnny Rod's school out there.
Brooklyn.
He was a good friend with a lot of people over on the roster. And I got this gig because it was at NWS, and one of the guys who was running the company, he, had a tag team with a partner who's no longer in wrestling. And that actually happened not long after I started. That's another story. So they were looking to try out to get a spot on NWS, because no matter what people said about NWS and say about NWS, a lot of them is well-deserved. If you would know, probably as well as I do, the stuff that went on with NWS. Mm-hmm. Nothing like, I don't want to say canceling worthy, but it was a lot of carny bullshit.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, they were, I think, at the time, like they ran like the top 5 most amount of wrestling events in the United States outside of WWE, any of the other major companies. The people that were there and they were regulars got a lot of work, and it brought in a lot of names that you could learn from. If anything good came out of NWS, it was that, along with other camaraderies along the way, and other talents. I'm going to leave them out, leave their names out because they're good people. But it's amazing how many people actually came from that NWS branch. It was actually Gino was calling in to be like, hey, try out with these guys with a tag match, a partner. He called me over. And I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. So I obviously then took the heat. It was fun for what it was. So then the tag team said, hey, we're starting your own company. You should come in and just have a squash match just to give yourself, a chance to work in front of a crowd. Okay, that's great. I get to the event. It was South River, New Jersey. Jay and I were kind of talking through the match because I'm here under the understanding that it was just going to be a squash. All right, so what are you going to do to me? How are you going to destroy me today? So Jay was very generous, and he said, hey, you have a lot of people here apparently for you, which is true. And I'm not trying to say anything like I'm trying to, hype myself up because I'm the last person to want to do that about myself. I had maybe about 15, 20 people in, like friends from my backyard group, and my family had come, and it was a big deal. And I didn't care if I was getting squashed or not. It was just cool to perform in front of them in an actual 18 by 18 ring. It was awesome. He planned the match, I should say, to help me get some stuff in. And I got my stuff in. It was great. I mean, people were behind me. It was awesome. It was a great match. The guy I wrestled actually was not booked again with that company ever again because they didn't follow directive. As a result, I wound up having a very small career because of that match, because people took notice and they're like, oh man, we want to get this guy to come in at our event. The promoter famously told me, and every now and again when I talk to him, he'll tell me, I went from the guy that nobody wanted to work because they looked at him and said, what are you doing bringing this like greener than fucking grass newbie in here, to everybody wanted to have a match against me at some point. So if it weren't for Jay, I wouldn't even be here right now because I would have just kept doing squash matches and all that other stuff. Who knows what I would have been doing in wrestling, if anything, right now.
So what was your gimmick name? What was your name that you used when you were working? Maybe people could look your stuff up on YouTube.
Oh, don't do yourself a favor. Don't look at anything else. But if you're so inclined, Dave Calypso. That name came from the Twisted Metal video game. The main boss's name was Calypso, and I always was intrigued by the name. Used my legitimate legal first name as part of DM.
Really? That's what the D stands for?
That is what the D and M are my first and middle initial. So that's where DM comes. So yeah, I just kept David and just screw it. I'm just going to call myself Calypso, and it stuck pretty good. And yeah, don't look up any of my matches. It was from when I was still starting, and it was absolutely terrible.
Well, my very, 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 very first match in the business was like the Drizzling Shits, and I actually. I remember thinking that match was the best thing that I've ever done in my entire life, and I was sending that around and wondering why I wasn't getting booked. And a couple years, maybe like 2 years after being a year after wrestling and seeing how good my matches were getting and seeing that dog shit that I put on the internet, I hid that match on YouTube. It still exists on YouTube, but it's hidden because I know I have much better bodies of work. But I did work for NWS one time. It was like a joint show between NWS and BWO. It was like a one-off show. It was in the middle of the week, maybe 2010 or something like that. I remember I worked a tag match, and Gino, for those of you who don't know, rest in peace to Gino. Gino was the booker, right? He wasn't the promoter, he was the booker, right?
He was the booker, and Dapper was the promoter.
Right. So Gino would sit and watch every single match, and he would time every single match. Yep. And Gino told me, and this was not a taped event. It wasn't a TV show. It wasn't.
No, it was just live in front of a crowd. Probably in Manville. I'll make it.
You know what? I couldn't even tell you where it was. I'd be lying if I told you where it was. But I remember coming through the show. When I'm saying Gino, I'm not talking about Gino Caruso from ECPW. Those are two different Ginos, because I didn't want to confuse it for our listeners. But I remember Gino giving us a time in the tag match. And when we came back through the curtain, we were 15 seconds short of what he wanted, and he ripped us a new asshole for being 15 seconds short. 15.
But that's good timing, though. Any other company would be like thrilled.
15 seconds short. He ripped us a new asshole. I couldn't believe it. We went out there, we gagaed, we put on the match, and at the end, we gagaed on the way out because we put the other team over, obviously, and then we left. 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's my story of Gino. That was probably the only time I ever met Gino. That's the only memory I ever have of Gino.
Yeah, you're probably better off. I mean, no disrespect to Gino. Again, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but he had experience, with the WW or WWF. I can't remember. That's why a lot of these names were able to get here.
Right.
But yeah, he knew what he wanted, and he treated it like a TV, which, is probably the best way that you can learn.
My in-ring role models, personally, are Randy Orton, Edge, and Triple H. Who are your in-ring role models?
The Hart brothers, Owen and Brett. I can't really – I don't know. I believe Owen had an amateur background too.
I believe so, yes.
An amateur background. Guys with an amateur background I always gravitated towards. It was either that or the super tall guys. Owen and Bret Hart are probably my two favorite wrestlers ever. Period.
Of all time, hands down.
Of all time, hands down. But you can't not recognize other influences, again, of amateur backgrounds like a Kurt Angle. I also enjoyed Mike Awesome, Kevin Nash, because they were so tall. Being 5'6" myself, that was always my hope that I would at least be at minimum like 6'5", because my uncle was tall as hell, and I was hoping I would get that part of the gene, but unfortunately I got my father's side of the short gene. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if I were to name role models or people I really enjoyed in the ring, like, say without a shadow of a doubt, or my two favorite wrestlers would be Bret and Owen Hart. Not a question.
So how did you feel about Ronda Rousey coming into the WWE? Because, she had a mixed martial arts background. And I'm not sure if she had a amateur wrestling background style, but I definitely know
judo.
She does judo. Okay. So how do you feel about her coming into professional wrestling and taking on the art that we do so quickly?
Well, it was great because I remember watching the WrestleMania match that she debuted in. I thought she did great with what limited work that they gave her, but you also had two great ring generals in there, Triple H and Kurt Angle.
That's right.
That were not going to allow her to embarrass the match or herself. That's a lack there of a better way of putting it. For taking it so quickly, having an athletic background, and she's trained like all hell, whether it be judo, because I believe she was a bronze medalist in the Olympics, silver or bronze medalist. Anyway, she was an Olympic competitor. And then obviously one of the more dominant UFC champions and, MMA champions of her time. I thought it was great for the sense of it is pop culture appeal. She had a big name in pop culture. She was doing movies and, biggest name in women's MMA. For me, it did nothing but benefit the WWE as far as getting additional exposure. I thought her work was great in the ring because, for all the stuff that people will say about WWE's women's roster, whatever the case may be, they have a bunch of good veteran talent, whether it be Natalya, whether it be Naomi. Yes, she's still a veteran talent. Charlotte can help carry anybody through a match. I mean, just look at the Survivor Series match. That was really great. I just wish the fans weren't, and for anybody who's listening that's a fan, I say this with peace and love. If fans weren't such pieces of shit and tried to discourage Ronda or to really just to give her a hard time, man, she was working a full-time schedule where her name equity could say, screw you, I'm going to work just the big four. So I gave her a lot of credit for doing a full-time schedule, even if it was for a year. She gave her best to pro wrestling. I think she deserves a lot more credit than she's getting, and she benefited, WWE and wrestling as a whole with her being involved.
You see, I 100% agree with you what you say about the fans, and when it comes to Ronda Rousey, I've had arguments with friends before about Ronda Rousey being in the main event of WrestleMania 35 with Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch. Here's the question I want to ask you, and this is one of the questions I've argued with my friend Dave a lot. Yep. Do you think that WrestleMania 35 needed Ronda Rousey to main event?
Yes.
Why?
It's not even a question. Well, I'm sorry, but at that point, If you're looking for, you look at WrestleMania main events traditionally. You look at WrestleManias 1 through 5, actually 1 through 6. No, the first 7 WrestleManias were all Hulk Hogan main eventing. At that point, even at WrestleMania 1, Hulk Hogan was a household name, and it wasn't even a question. Pop culture would know Hulk. They knew Hulk Hogan from anywhere. If you didn't have Hogan in the main event of WrestleMania, for even a casual fan, it wasn't even worth trying to purchase. And the same goes for 8. WrestleMania 11, Lawrence Taylor. He wrestled with Bam Bam Bigelow. I mean, that's a pop culture name.
Right.
You needed that name to get the buys in and to get the main event over. Everyone criticized, why didn't Diesel and Shawn main event? Because it's for the championship. I agree with that in a sense, but you look at the business side of wrestling business, you needed Lawrence Taylor for that main event, especially on such a downturn of the industry at that point. WrestleManias, you look at 14 through 18. I mean, you had, 14 through 18. You had either main events or semi-main events with people who were household names, because that was the uprising of wrestling at that point. So, I mean, I think I can run through the gamut here, but at the same time, you're not going to sell a WrestleMania main event on just Charlotte and Becky at that point. Maybe to the hardcore fan, but if you want the casual viewer or the people who just are big Ronda Rousey fans because she has a huge following, if you want them to sell a credible WrestleMania, a women's WrestleMania main event with star power, you needed Ronda. If Ronda wasn't going to play ball and not, be a part of that match, that main event would not have worked. It could not have been the main event.
I 100% agree. The professional wrestling fans or the WWE fans would love to see Charlotte and Becky Lynch by herself, but it's WrestleMania. It's your Super Bowl, and you need to get those extra eyes that may not would have given you a look to give you a look. Because of Ronda Rousey, they were talking about WWE on ESPN. They were talking about her on regular mainstream news, on TMZ. She was everywhere, and because of that, that gave them that extra buzz that they needed. So I wholeheartedly agree with you that they needed Ronda Rousey to be that main event.
Let's make another point too. Fans could also argue, and I see this side of the argument for people who want to give WWE any and all help possible. WrestleMania is its own brand. It doesn't need that main event draw anymore as far as like a Hogan or an Austin or a Rock. You know what I mean? Like, WrestleMania is its own brand. They're going to do whatever the hell they want with it anyway.
Right.
For me, WrestleMania has lost its prestige in the last, I'll say since WrestleMania 30, since they started really throwing shit against the wall to kind of see what sticks. And
right.
Everybody's getting a spot. You don't feel like anybody's really earning it. I mean, you're just giving them a payday because, let's face it, WrestleMania money is ridiculous. Between, the cities giving the money for the bid and the whole bit, right?
Right.
But for the hardcore fan, still need to sell on the legitimacy of the main event. Or sorry, for the casual viewer, you need to sell it for the legitimacy of the main event, like that extra little oomph to get people to order it. Because at that time, you could have sold Becky and Charlotte just fine. At that moment, 2 years ago, would you really have bought it?
I mean, I would have. But the casual fan that casually watches, maybe not.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going at.
And glad that you actually mentioned it, because a lot of people don't understand, and these are for my listeners that are not big-time wrestling fans. WrestleMania is big money for a local municipality, for the state, for the local tourism. WrestleMania is just as big as the Super Bowl. You want the Super Bowl and WrestleMania. If you can be lucky and get the Super Bowl and WrestleMania in your state in the same year, you're doing really good financially, because the Super Bowl creates jobs. Back in the day when they were running, they would come into town on Wednesday, and they wouldn't leave the town until Tuesday. So you have these people in town for a whole entire week bringing in all this extra money. Regardless of what you think about professional wrestling, if nothing else, some people just only check out the Super Bowl. But now I hope that people understand that WrestleMania is a big money product. And like you said, it's a brand of its own. It sells itself. Back in the day when WrestleMania first started, WrestleMania was sold by the wrestlers. But now I don't think there's one wrestler in the WWE that's bigger than the brand. I think the last wrestler that was bigger than the brand was maybe John Cena. Maybe?
No, I would say John Cena. Easy. Consistent talent, yes. You could argue Brock, too. I think the last person to really be bigger than a brand was Cena.
So back to you. So you stepped away from pro wrestling a bit and came back in 2013 as a referee.
Mm-hmm.
What made you leave?
I kind of alluded to it before. Mom got ill. She was my biggest inspiration to go into wrestling. She encouraged my fandom and the whole bit, right?
Right.
So when she, when she got ill, I feel like I need to take care of her. So not only did I leave wrestling, but I left my job my full-time job that was really good to me at that point. I left a lot behind just to make sure she was okay.
Right.
Then she ultimately passed away. Then I figured, okay, I'll come back to wrestle a little bit. Then I wrestled a little bit after she had passed away. So it's June of 2010. So I might have done a couple events after that. And then I said, you know what? I'm So then when I came back to wrestling in 2013 as a referee, that started off as a one-off. Like I was just going to referee one match. That's a whole other story in of itself. I was going to referee one match. Then it turned out to refereeing half the card. Mm-hmm. And then I refereed the card, and they kept asking me to come back, which is great. But I also never promoted myself like maybe I should have, because mentally I still wasn't all there. It was 3 years past her passing, and I was still kind of trying to figure my stuff out.
Right.
So, and after about a year of reffing, I kind of left, and then I came back last year. At that time, I felt like I was ready to kind of get back to it. And thankfully, I kept in contact with a bunch of people who were still in wrestling or keeping their fingers in wrestling, so I can kind of find my way back in some way. So now here I am.
Well, welcome back, and I'm glad that you're here. I left professional wrestling in 2013 as well, too, because for me, it wasn't fun anymore. My mind wasn't just into it anymore. It wasn't fun. And if it's not fun, I didn't want to do it. But when I came back, which was maybe 3 years ago now, I realized that I didn't know anybody in the wrestling business. Everybody was brand new. Did you have that issue?
For the most part. Again, I kept in touch with a bunch of people, whether it be through the podcast I've done over the years, on and off for like about 8 years. So I kept in touch with people that way. And, so when I kind of came back in, like the first event I came back to, I knew one person because I worked a one-off show a year prior, because they said, hey, would you be interested in doing it? I said, sure. If I didn't know that one person, even though it wasn't like, we were buddy, we were cordial. But if it weren't even for that, then maybe that first event back would have been complete nightmare. But it turned out to be pretty good. I was very happy with that. And then as I kind of went on, I found more people that remembered who I was, and we would talk, and it kind of made it a little bit easier to kind of get to know a lot of these people, because, okay, well, if this person likes them, then they're cool, and we'll talk with them. So, unfortunately, I feel bad that, you didn't know anybody coming back in.
Like I knew a few people, because a lot of the people that I knew either left or either went on to WWE or they were wrestling like someplace big. But when I came back, it's a bunch of new kids. I'm like, oh, wow. I'm sitting around the locker room. I'm like, I'm technically the OG here because I've been around the longest. Okay. And then, it's weird because now at the time I was going up to people asking them, hey, can you watch my match? Now everybody's coming up to me. Hey, can you watch my match? Hey, can you watch my match? Yeah. And I always watch your match and they always ask me, hey, at the end, hey, what do you think? And one of the things that I learned a long time ago, D, is that you should have somebody watch your match every single time, just so that you can get some kind of feedback. And one of the things that I always ask when people say at the end, how did I do? I always tell them, do you want me to sugarcoat it for you? Or do you want me to be dead ass honest with you? And a lot of people say be dead ass honest with them. And when they say dead ass honest, I give them the criticism that they deserve.
Yeah, then they can't take it.
Yes, some people can't take it. Yes. But you know what? There are people that were back in the day, and I'm sure that you'd walk from back into the locker room and you'd ask somebody, how's your match? Oh, brother, your match was good. But when you watch the match back, it was the drizzling shits.
Either that, or I've had one guy who's in WWE now, I'm not going to mention his name because I can't stand the motherfucker, excuse me.
It's all right.
But I remember the guy I was wrestling with, I mean, this is going back years ago when I started. I was in the ring with a friend of mine who was, a well-seasoned vet. I thought the match was fantastic. We thought that this person was going to watch. Oh, sorry, guys, I didn't watch the match. go to hell, man.
Right.
So from that point where he didn't really, I mean, it was obvious he didn't give a shit about even being there. You know, that person's always been a sour note on my book. But I've worked with his son since, and his son's not a piece of shit. So that's a good thing. But even when I first came back, I still kept my finger on the indies, like seeing who refs what. And two referees, and I'll put them over here, that I am fortunate to have learned from are from Ref Ryan T and Adam Gall. And I knew that Adam in particular had, television experience at that point, and Ryan had experience with, House of Hardcore, among other places. And I asked them, if you could watch my match, because this is like when I'm first really coming back and getting in the groove. And, they're like, yeah, sure. I mean, thanks for asking. And then they're asking how long I've been doing this, like not in a negative light. But I told them, how long I've been in and out of wrestling. They're like, oh, well, why the hell are you asking me to look at your match?
I get that a lot.
And I said, because I've been out of the game for a little while, and I know things change every day, let alone with the amount of years that I just want to make sure that I'm doing doing the platform that I love so much a service, because I don't want to feel like just because I can come back means I come back. No, I wanted to make sure I was doing everything a service. Because of them, I've learned a hell of a lot since coming back, and I've been in constant contact with them all the time.
So I'm gonna put you over a little bit.
Oh God,
listeners, if you're a wrestler out there, one have this guy as your referee. They're not where I come around. Where I work on the indie, there's not a lot of good referees out here on the indies. And when I go someplace and I see that you're on the card D, I always want you as my referee. Because like you're good. You remember a match, and we're not going to call any names. Remember a couple months ago we did that match. It was in December, and I was working the guy, and the guy just wouldn't stay down. Remember that match?
Oh, dude.
Don't mention the name. But you see,
I'm not gonna mention names, but I just remember looking at him and looking at you, kind of being like, "What the hell's going on?"
Right.
And I remember like after I thought he just couldn't hear you. I'm like, dude, stay down, listen to him. But
and that's what makes you a good referee, because you understand the message that I'm trying to convey to him. And I'm body slamming him, dropping elbows on him, punching him, and he's still getting up. I'm like, stay down. First it's like, stay down. Then it's like, stay the fuck down. Stay the fuck down. And then you're telling him, dude, stay down. And I'm telling him, sell. And he won't sell.
Yeah.
Those are some of the little things that make you a good referee, because I know that when you're in the ring, I could use you to pass on a message to the other guy in the ring. There's other people that are out there that you can't pass on the message, that they're like, what? I'm supposed to do what? No, it's a quick message. Tell them to, come get me or something like that. Whatever it is, you're a good referee, and you should be booked a lot of places. And I personally hope that you get to the next level, if that's what you want to do. Is that what you want to do? Do you want to get to the next level?
Well, let me before I answer your question, let me cut off another thing for any referee listening. When you see two talent or more talent, I don't want to say struggle, but you'll know if they're kind of lost in a spot, or they're trying to figure out where they're going from here. Don't be afraid to go to them and be like, yo, what do you need? Because that happened, we've been out of wrestling for a long time, but fairly not too long ago, I kind of looked at the guy, and he's trying to figure out how to say it to somebody, and they're all the way across the ring, and then they're just, I'm like, dude, what do you need? Well, tell them to do this. And then you just go over there, and it's just like, and then you deliver the message, and then they kind of get back on the same page, because believe me, guys and gals, every little bit helps. You're the conduit between the talent in the ring, whether it be one-on-one, tag, trios, multi-man, stunt fest, whatever you're working. You're a valuable piece, not just to stand there and believe you have the best seat in the house, which is very true. You do, but, you're there to work too.
That's right.
So, work, you're trying to help get the talent over, even if that means just to deliver a message. Jesus, the smallest ring you'll ever work in is a 16 by 16. The largest you'll work in is a 20 by 20. It really doesn't make that much effort to walk across the ring, because you're supposed to look busy anyway.
Right.
Do your freaking part. God, that drives me nuts. Sorry, I had to go off.
You know what the thing is too, though? It's just that there's a lot of guys that are in the wrestling business that are refereeing because they're starting out, and they don't understand their role.
They don't want to, because they feel like they're just going to be a wrestler.
Right. And I've said to guys plenty of times that, hey, if the WWE calls you right now and tells you to come be a referee and you want to be a wrestler, are you going to tell them no?
No, you want that damn paycheck. And is it really my first goal to be on a main stage like a WWE, AEW? I'm going to say no. Only because, I mean, I have a good job. I have a good, full-time job, good benefits, decent pay. It's not like, I mean, I love wrestling. I want to help whoever and, whoever I can, however I can. Because a lot of these men and women that are out there working, that's where they want to be. And I respect that. But if I could offer something to help them get there, or, maybe just a little nudge, or, maybe something that they wouldn't have thought of, then yeah, I'm here for that. But, I mean, I would love to work AEW. I would love to work MLW, Impact, Ring of Honor. I would love that opportunity because it looks good on a resume. And, I'll get a picture of it from one of the photographers ringside, hopefully, or have some video footage of it to be able to show off one of these days. I'm not a person that likes to brag about myself, but it's one of those things where it's like, it'd be a cool memento and something that I could say I did, and guess what? I approved.
Back in the day when I first started, I couldn't understand how people were in the wrestling business and did not want to go all the way. You know what? Some people's dreams were just to become pro wrestlers, and they've done that, and they've achieved that dream. But if you ask me, I personally don't think that you're a shitty referee. Like I said, you're one of my favorite referees that I like to have. If I can request you, I request you, and honestly, I wish you nothing but the best when it comes in a wrestling business, because not only are you a good referee, you're a good guy. Now we're into your business as being a referee. What has been your favorite match that you've participated in as a referee?
There's a couple. The one that jumps off the page right away is the main event of Squared Circle Project. I believe it was Rubik's Cube. It was Homicide versus Chris Dickinson. That was a hell of a contest. I mean, just to be in the ring with those two guys, one-on-one, no multi-man stuff, no tag. It's just the two of them working. And holy shit. I mean, just even being in the ring reffing those two, you learn a lot. I mean, you're paying attention to the match because you're working it like a shoot. But you're learning a lot even from a wrestler's point of view, because again, there's still a lot of times I'll think like a wrestler. It'll never leave me. But, again, something else that I'll take in that maybe I can make a point of reference to somebody down the line. There's plenty of them. I mean, a bunch of them over at Pro Wrestling Magic. Meadowlands Monster versus Evan Myers. That was a good match that I got the opportunity to wrestle in. Evan Myers' retirement match. That was cool. Mm-hmm. Robbie Roller versus Matt Vertigo from UWA Elite. That's one of them that sticks out to me. And there's so many, but if there's three that really stick out, I would probably have to point to those three.
I know that you're a video game guy.
Yes.
So since you're a video game guy, and there might be some video game guys or gals listening, dude, are you getting the new Xbox or are you getting the PS5? Which one are you getting?
PC. No, if I had my choice, I would get a PS5.
Okay, so why the PS5 over the Xbox? I don't know. I don't remember what they're calling it. The Xbox Series X.
A lot of the reason why I got my PS4, or I was gifted my PS4 when I got it, was because a lot of the fighting game tournaments that I would compete in, they were playing on PlayStation 4, unless the tournament was hosting like Killer Instinct or another older game or something, then they would use Xbox. So PlayStation's been the main console for a lot of these tournaments. So I'm going to assume once these consoles are released, that it's the same rules that are going to apply, whether it be they carry over, the PS4, depending on what fighting games released at the time of PS5's launch, or whatever the case may be. But I'm going to be under the assumption that PlayStation's still going to be the main console of choice for a lot of these fighting games. So that's strictly why. I mean, I love my PS4 anyway, other than, the fighting games. Yeah, I've been more on PS4 than Xbox One. Like, choice, I'd probably go PS5.
So for me, I want to get both because I'm greedy. Because I actually have both now. I have the Xbox One
Same.
and I have the PS4. But
Yeah,
the PS4 for me was more like my party console. And like if I went to somebody's house for a party, or sometimes I bring it to my shoot job, and we might play, or play Uno or something like that. Since we're on video games, what is your favorite pro wrestling game of all time? This is one of my favorite questions to ask everybody.
Here Comes the Pain. I didn't even have to think twice. Well, you know what? But okay. Here Comes the Pain is probably my favorite wrestling video game of all time. But you can't, talk about some of the best games of all time and not bring in, WWF No Mercy or, WCW NWO Revenge to the conversation, because, a lot of my favorite memories as a kid were playing those games with people, because A, it was fun, B, they would ask me a lot of questions trying to educate them on pro wrestling because they weren't fans, or if they were fans, it was a long time past. So I was teaching them as well as having fun. But then I also enjoyed like Royal Rumble for the Sega Genesis and, a whole bunch of other slew of games. But the one that I had the most fun playing is probably Here Comes the Pain.
That's actually a good game. A lot of people have rated that really great. IGN gave that game 9.1 out of 10. You got GamePro giving it 4 out of 5 stars. GameSpy 4 out of 5 stars. So that's actually a good game. WWE SmackDown Here Comes the Pain on PlayStation 2. If I had to play a game, a pro wrestling game, and on any console, it'd be No Mercy, hands down, because just like you said about memories, that game brings back the memories for me when I used to play with my cousins down at my grandmother's house way back in the day. Well, I'm not sure if you've heard, but 2K, who currently releases all the WWE video games, they're not releasing WWE 2K21 as their next edition.
Thank God.
Do you think that it's a good move on 2K's part? Obviously, by your response, I think you think it's a good move. Tell me, why do you think it's a good move?
Very good move, because I haven't played a WWE video game probably since 2009. I was gifted a game in 2011, and I think I played it once. Any other time I played a game between then and now was whenever my cousin had it, and obviously he would play it, and he was good with it, and I acknowledged that I was just going to be terrible, and he'd be like, I still beat your ass, and I would look at him like, don't talk to me like that. So 2K19 had its own problems, but 2K20 was just an absolute nightmare as far as like software and online play, and it's just everything that could go wrong went wrong with it. I think it was just a good move to give it a break. For the history of WWE and innovation, I mean, you look from back in the WWF days, they missed a golden opportunity, and even the gaming studio, to just release one WWE video game and then update it every year, or update it as it goes along. You don't need to have a brand new title, for each year. I mean, I think that just gets ridiculous after a while. You learn from a lot of these fighting games that have seasons. Street Fighter V is about to release their newest season, and you pay, let's say, like $30 for a new package, even though you paid $60 for a new game. Each season is going to cost like $25, $30. So you're still making money. You're basically paying wholesale costs at that point. I mean, there's ways that you could have made money with that game with just one solid title and just keep constantly updating.
You see, you took the words right out of my mouth, because I want to know, what do you think that 2K should do to make the WWE 2K brand a better game? And that's something that I agree with as well too.
Keep it away.
You do. First off, keep it away. I think they need to rebuild the game and make it a better game. I think they need to make it easier to play. It's too much of a simulation, if you ask me. WWE does have another game coming out instead, WWE Battlegrounds. I don't want it to be too much like Battlegrounds. I want to have a different feel to it, but they're trying to make it as if like you're actually in the ring. And one of the things that I feel that 2K Studios should do is that they, just like you said, release a game, and maybe every 2-3 years you release a new game, but you charge everybody $30 just to buy another pack. That's something that I 100% think that they should do. But WWE Battlegrounds is actually taking place of WWE 2K21 in the next coming year. WWE Battlegrounds is launching this fall, and I want to know, what are your thoughts on WWE Battleground?
It could be this generation's In Your House, There Goes the Neighborhood. Give people a little something different. Take a little bit of a break from the 2K games or for anything else like that. Like you don't need just roll with this game a little bit and see where it goes. And I mean, I'm so disenchanted with wrestling video games, like from WWE as a whole. That's where I'm hopeful. AEW has a game coming out. I'm looking forward to that virtual basement title that might be coming out.
It was supposed to be they were supposed to be the Chikara game, but I don't think we're going to get the Chikara game anymore.
We aren't going to get it, from what I understand, but they're looking into different ways to possibly release it without the actual Chikara name.
Okay.
But then there's also the RetroSoft Studios game, Retromania, whatever the name of that game's going to be.
Yep.
That'll be coming out shortly, I guess. You know, we have options on television. We have options in the gaming world soon, and it's going to be something really exciting to look forward to.
Do you actually host a pro wrestling? It's a video podcast, but it's actually a podcast as well, too, that you can find where you find podcasts. It's actually called Open Mic Wrestling Night. How did your show come to be?
I needed something to keep me busy, and it was during when I originally started. It was probably about 9 years ago, before podcasting became the big thing that everybody's clamoring to. Everybody has to have a podcast and the whole bit. A lot of my reasoning for doing it, obviously, A, to keep busy, and B, is to help promote a lot of local independents out there, because a lot of these guys and gals were being overlooked, and it sucked. That's always been my main objective of the podcast. I ventured into talking TV wrestling at one point when I wasn't in wrestling anymore. Then I figured, man, this sounds stupid because everybody else is doing it. I mean, that's just me. Once I kind of kept concentrating on what I know best, is working with the independent talent, then, you know, and it's amazing now, especially how hot pro wrestling is. Everybody wants to hear from everybody. One of the subscribers for the channel always looks forward to new talent that they have never heard of before, because, you know, somebody else's support is really somebody to look out after. So I've turned a lot of people on to other new talent because, you know, maybe they're not they don't have the name equity of like an Effie or MV Young, or, you know, just a lot of these other talents. Deanna Purrazzo, new Knockouts champion now. So, you know, I wanted to get those names out there too. And I feel like that's part of my mission in independence, to help get people's names out there, because you never know who's watching, you never know who's listening. Yeah, that was really pretty much the origins of the podcast as a whole. We're going on Twitch because I like the platform of Twitch. I like broadcasting. Why not? And then incorporate what I know with editing and all that other stuff with the podcast over time. Why not continue posting that online as well, you know, for audio, for people who prefer that?
That's true.
So I'm trying to cover all my bases here, you know?
Yeah, well, I think you're doing really good. I think one of the hardest things about doing a podcast is doing the podcast. So I commend you for doing a podcast. For me, you know, I have the same exact purpose as well too. Hey, you know what? My show is going to be primarily for the wrestling fan, but I know that there are going to be people that listen to this, like my mother, who does not know anything about wrestling. You know, she might learn something or be interested in just to hear who I have on each week. So that's who I feel that my audience will be. You know, just like you said earlier in our discussion, there are people that we have worked with or come across in the wrestling business that have come on to do bigger and better things. So you never know if a show like yours, Open Mic Night, or this show, the Tristen Law Show, will introduce somebody to somebody who they never know, and they go on YouTube and look for them and go, oh, wow, you know, this person's actually really good, and they gain a new fan from that. And it's all about, for me, it's about getting anybody who comes on my show, it's all about them getting themselves over. Open Mic Wrestling Night, which you could find on Twitch, and for people to look forward to seeing you at their favorite wrestling events as a referee. On Open Mic Wrestling Night, who's been your favorite person to interview so far?
Anybody who gives me some. Anybody that can make my part of the conversation a little bit easier, to offer something to talk about. I've had the best time with, I just had Oren Veit, deathmatch wrestler, come on not too long ago. He was a hell of a good conversation. I had talked with a guy by the name of Royce Chambers out of Australia. If you like Alex Zane in the United States, you should check out Royce Chambers out of Australia. He is something special, and there's going to come a day where a promoter is going to want to book that match in the United States, and you better be right there when those tickets go on sale, man, because that's going to be a match that could main event any independent card anywhere in the world, Australia, Japan, anything. Matt Vertigo is another one that I really enjoyed having on. You know, just two of those people I'd never even met before talking to them on the podcast. Vertigo, I've worked with, you know, a couple places. So, I mean, the best conversations don't always have to come with people that you know. You just make what's best of it. But those are the and this is no disrespect to anybody who's come on the podcast before, of course, but if you're to put a gun in my head, hey, answer this now, those will be probably my three.
Who's on your bucket list to interview?
Anybody who wants to come on. For any podcast that talks with independent talent, they really talk with the same 5-6 people.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I want to bring on anybody who wants to come on, who wants to get themselves over, who offers something good to talk about. Anybody. I don't care. I don't care who you are unless you're, a piece of shit. Then I don't want you on. But
Yep.
for any good person that wants to come on, man, woman, whatever you identify as, I don't judge here. So, anybody that ever wants to come on, feel free.
You know what? It was actually so good to actually have you here with me today, man. It was a pleasure. I appreciate it. Tell everybody how they can find you, because I know if I try to tell everybody how they want to find you, I'm going to just fuck it up.
All right. Well, thanks for giving me the time. First of all, this has been a lot of fun. It's nice to be the one interviewed instead of the one interviewing somebody else. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram at RefDMStevens. That's RefDMStevens. And if you just want to follow the podcast, that's greatly appreciated too. Instagram at open_mic_wrestling_night, or on Twitter, Open Mic Wrestling. Leave out the G for good sake. So that's where you can find me, anywhere you want to find me. Tristen, I appreciate you giving me the time, and thank you for the conversation. This has been a heck of a lot of fun, and hopefully we get to do this again, whether it be at my place or your place.
Hey, you know what? It's an open invite. Anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome to come on. Hey, listeners, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Stay tuned to find out who is going to be on next week. This is the Tristen Law Show. Keep it locked, and I'll be right back. Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. That shirt you're wearing is so not cool. Why don't you head on over to TristenLawShow.com and get yourself a new shirt? Not only will you be cool, but you'll also be supporting the show. What are you waiting for? Go now and get a hat too while you're at it. Thank me later. We're the show at TristenLawShow.com. Welcome back to the Tristen Law Show. Hey, thank you so much for hanging around. Hey, thank you so much for listening. I really hope you guys enjoyed that interview with DM Stevens. After talking to DM Stevens, he went on his social media, and after some long thought, he decided that he's going to step away from professional wrestling for just a bit. Again, DM, I told you this in the interview, and I'm going to say it again. There aren't many referees like you on the independent wrestling scene, and you will be missed. All in all, though, I think he's an interesting guy if you ask me. I've never met anyone personally, seriously, I've never met anyone that's known so much about fish in my entire life. I know that's really silly. This guy here, DM Stevens, he's like a fish guru. Next week, the guest we're going to have in next week's show, it's going to be professional wrestler Love Jones. I really hope that you guys like that one. I definitely hope that you enjoyed hanging out with me. And don't forget, if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, to subscribe. I want you to leave a review. That's what I'm telling you what to do. Leave a review and rate the Tristen Law Show 5 stars. The reason why you do all that is because it helps Apple and my team know that you really liked what you heard. And the best part, it's all free. I know you may not have listened on an Apple device, but wherever you've listened, please subscribe if you can, and definitely tell a friend, because I'll be waiting for them. This is the Tristen Law Show, and you can learn so much more about the Tristen Law Show at TristenLawShow.com. I am Tristen Law, and until next time, adios.